Evelyn Carter had always trusted numbers more than people. Numbers were honest. Numbers didn't charm you at cocktail parties or kiss your forehead before slipping out to meet someone else. Numbers either added up, or they didn't. And lately, nothing in her marriage was adding up. It started on a Tuesday night in their Tribeca loft, the city humming below like a restless machine. Evelyn sat curled on the Italian leather couch with her laptop balanced on her knees, reviewing their monthly statements out of habit. She was a hedge fund analyst, precision was her comfort zone. Her husband, Marcus Hale, was in the shower, humming off-key. He worked at a prestigious midtown hedge fund, the kind that made headlines and minted millionaires before 40. A line item caught her eye. Client entertainment, $4,872.16. She frowned. Marcus's firm reimbursed entertainment expenses. Always had. Yet this charge was on their joint credit card. She clicked deeper. A Michelin-starred restaurant. A private wine tasting. A boutique hotel in Soho. Not impossible. But unusual. Marcus's clients were institutional, pension funds and corporate boards. They didn't do intimate dinners in romantic hotels. Evelyn felt a flicker of unease. She told herself it was nothing. A billing error, maybe. She flagged it mentally and closed the laptop. But the number lingered in her mind like a wrong note in a symphony. Over the next few weeks, Evelyn started watching. Not obsessively. Calmly. Methodically. Another charge appeared. Then another. Each labeled vaguely, entertainment, art acquisition, client relations. The totals climbed into 5 figures. She built a private spreadsheet, color-coding expenses, tracing dates and locations. Patterns emerged with chilling clarity. The charges aligned perfectly with Marcus's supposed late client dinners. And then she saw the gallery name. Lemaire Contemporary. Evelyn knew it. A sleek Chelsea gallery famous for emerging artists, and for its striking owner, Camille Lemaire, who appeared regularly in lifestyle magazines. Evelyn's stomach tightened. She opened Instagram. Camille's profile bloomed across the screen, elegant, magnetic, always photographed beside powerful men and expensive art. One recent post stopped Evelyn cold. A familiar watch rested casually on a man's wrist in the corner of the frame. Marcus's watch. The caption read, "Private evening with my favorite collector." The date matched one of the largest charges. Evelyn closed her laptop slowly. The room felt smaller, the air thinner. Still, she didn't cry. Not yet. The confirmation came weeks later at a pre-hearing dinner with friends, a glittering Manhattan affair full of lawyers and financiers. Wine flowed. Laughter echoed. Someone joked about divorce settlements. Marcus smirked and squeezed Evelyn's hand like a prop. "My bonuses are my separate property," he announced lightly. "If we ever split, she gets the furniture." The table laughed. Evelyn smiled too, but her pulse thundered in her ears. Separate property? Marcus deposited every bonus into their joint accounts. She managed those accounts herself. She knew every transfer. And suddenly, she understood. He thought she didn't. Evelyn went quiet after that. Not distant, precise. She gathered documents like assembling a financial autopsy. 3 years of pay stubs. 1099's expense reports. Bank statements. She reconstructed the flow of money with forensic elegance. Bonuses deposited into joint accounts. Transfers labeled as art purchases. Payments routed to shell LLCs tied to Camille's gallery. Then cash withdrawals. Dissipation of marital assets. The legal term tasted sharp and satisfying. She hired a forensic accountant under the guise of consulting work. Together, they built an airtight timeline, a visual narrative of betrayal told entirely in numbers. Every dollar Marcus spent on his affair glowed red on the spreadsheet. The total reached $1.1 million. Evelyn stared at the figure for a long time. It wasn't just money. It was stolen trust quantified. The courtroom smelled faintly of old wood and polished ambition. Marcus sat confidently beside his attorney, offering Evelyn a rehearsed smile. He believed this would be routine, a clean split, minimal damage. Evelyn's lawyer stood. Your Honor, we present evidence of commingling and dissipation of marital assets. Screens flickered to life. Charts bloomed across the courtroom, elegant, undeniable. Lines tracing money from bonuses to joint accounts to Camille's gallery. Gasps rippled through the room. Marcus's confidence cracked. His jaw tightened as the timeline unfolded: dinners, hotel stays, art purchases resold for cash. The judge's expression hardened. Mr. Hale, she said coolly, these bonuses were deposited into joint accounts. They are marital property. And the dissipation ruling requires restitution. The number echoed like a verdict from fate. $550,000 owed to Evelyn. Half of what he squandered. Marcus looked at her then, really looked, and saw a stranger. Calm. Unshaken. Victorious. Evelyn could have stopped there. But numbers demanded closure. She drafted a discreet email to Marcus's firm's compliance department, attaching a curated selection of evidence. No accusations. Just facts. Within weeks, whispers spread through Wall Street. An internal probe launched. Marcus's trades were scrutinized. His expense reports dissected. His reputation, once sterling, began to tarnish. By the time the investigation concluded, the damage was irreversible. No firm wanted a scandal-tainted analyst. Marcus Hale became radioactive in finance. Evelyn could have stopped there. But numbers demanded closure. She drafted a discreet email to Marcus's firm's compliance department, attaching a curated selection of evidence. No accusations. Just facts. Within weeks, whispers spread through Wall Street. An internal probe launched. Marcus's trades were scrutinized. His expense reports dissected. His reputation, once sterling, began to tarnish. By the time the investigation concluded, the damage was irreversible. No firm wanted a scandal-tainted analyst. Marcus Hale became radioactive in finance. With the settlement funds, Evelyn launched something new. A boutique investment advisory firm dedicated to women navigating wealth, divorce, and independence. She named it Equilibrium Partners. Her clients came quietly at first, referrals from lawyers, friends of friends. Women with stories etched into their eyes. Women who had trusted and been betrayed. Evelyn taught them what she'd learned. Money was language. And fluency was freedom. Her firm grew. So did she. 1 year later, Evelyn stood in her Tribeca loft, city lights glittering like constellations beneath her windows. Champagne fizzed softly in her glass. The space felt different now. Lighter. Entirely hers. Her phone buzzed with messages from satisfied clients, colleagues, friends. A network built on respect rather than illusion. She stepped onto the balcony and inhaled the electric New York air. For the first time in years, the numbers aligned perfectly. Assets balanced. Debts cleared. Future expansive. Evelyn raised her glass to the skyline. Not to Marcus. Not to revenge. To precision. To survival. To the quiet power of understanding your own worth. The champagne tasted crisp and clean. And as the city pulsed around her, Evelyn Carter smiled, knowing that in the grand ledger of her life, she was finally, unmistakably in the black. Success didn't come quietly. 6 months after launching Equilibrium Partners, Evelyn's schedule was packed with consultations. Her office overlooked Bryant Park, a deliberate choice. She liked watching the constant motion of strangers. It reminded her that everyone carried invisible battles. One rainy afternoon, her assistant knocked softly. "There's a walk-in asking for you. Says it's urgent." Evelyn almost declined. She hated unscheduled meetings. But something in the assistant's voice, hesitant, sympathetic, made her pause. "Send her in." The woman who entered looked familiar in a distant, unsettling way. Designer coat. Perfect hair. Eyes rimmed red. It took Evelyn a heartbeat to place her. Camille. The gallery owner looked smaller without the spotlight. Her confidence had drained away, leaving a fragile human outline. "I won't take much of your time," Camille said, voice trembling. I didn't know where else to go." Evelyn gestured to the chair across from her desk, her face unreadable. Camille explained in rushed fragments. The bounced checks. The legal threats. The gallery closing. Investors pulling out. Marcus had promised stability, protection. Instead, he'd collapsed and taken her with him. "I thought he was powerful," Camille whispered. "I thought he was safe." Evelyn felt an unexpected flicker of recognition. Not sympathy exactly, but understanding. They had both believed in the same illusion, just from opposite sides. "I can't undo what happened," Evelyn said carefully. "But I can help you stabilize what's left." Camille's shoulders sagged with relief. In that moment, Evelyn realized something profound: revenge had already burned itself out. What remained was choice. She could perpetuate the cycle of destruction, or interrupt it. She chose interruption. Working with Camille was complicated. At first, every meeting carried an undercurrent of shared history. But numbers, once again, became neutral territory. Evelyn restructured Camille's debts, negotiated settlements, and helped her pivot toward consulting for emerging artists instead of running a high-risk gallery. Weeks turned into months. Professional respect replaced awkward tension. They spoke less about Marcus and more about resilience, reinvention, the strange freedom of starting over. One evening after a long session, Camille lingered at the office door. "You know," she said softly, "you could have destroyed me completely." Evelyn considered this. "I didn't want to become the kind of person who measures success by someone else's ruin." Camille nodded slowly. "You're stronger than I ever was." Evelyn smiled faintly. "Strength isn't loud. It's consistent." Marcus resurfaced a year later. Not in finance, that door was permanently closed, but as a consultant for a small startup. The salary was modest. The prestige non-existent. He requested a meeting. Evelyn almost refused. Curiosity won. They met at a quiet cafe near her office. Marcus looked older, the sharp edges of his former arrogance worn down by consequence. "I wanted to apologize," he said, fingers tightening around his coffee cup. "Not to fix anything. Just to say it." Evelyn studied his face. The apology felt genuine, stripped of performance. "I accept," she replied calmly. "But forgiveness doesn't rewrite history." "I know." He exhaled shakily. "Seeing what you built, it's incredible. You always were the brilliant one. I just didn't want to admit it." The admission hung between them, a final truth surfacing too late to matter. They parted without bitterness. Without longing. Simply two people acknowledging the end of a chapter. As Marcus disappeared into the crowd, Evelyn felt a surprising lightness. Closure wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, almost gentle. Equilibrium Partners expanded beyond Evelyn's expectations. She hired advisors, opened a second office, and launched workshops teaching financial literacy to women nationwide. Her clients sent letters describing new homes purchased independently, businesses started, futures reclaimed. Each story felt like a small victory against a culture that had taught too many women to outsource their financial agency. One evening, after a successful seminar, Evelyn returned to her loft and found a handwritten note slipped under her door. "You changed my life. I didn't know numbers could feel like freedom." A grateful client. She held the note for a long time, feeling its weight. This was wealth of a different kind, intangible, expansive, immune to market fluctuations. On the anniversary of her court victory, Evelyn hosted a small gathering at her loft. Friends, colleagues, and clients mingled, laughter weaving through the air. Camille attended too, now thriving as an independent consultant. They shared a quiet toast by the window. To second chances, Camille said. Evelyn clinked her glass gently. And to knowing when to take them. As the party hummed behind her, Evelyn stepped onto the balcony once more. The skyline stretched endlessly, a testament to ambition and reinvention. She thought about the woman she'd been a year ago, suspicious, wounded, standing at the edge of collapse. And she thought about the woman she was now, steady, self-possessed, architect of her own future. The numbers still mattered. They always would. But they were no longer shields against betrayal. They were tools for building something larger than fear. Evelyn closed her eyes, letting the city's rhythm pulse through her. Somewhere below, millions of stories unfolded simultaneously, heartbreak and triumph intertwined. Her own story was just one thread in that vast tapestry. But it was hers. And for the first time, completely and irrevocably, it added up years later. Evelyn woke before sunrise. Not because of anxiety. Not because of deadlines. Simply because her body had learned peace. Soft light spilled into her Tribeca loft. The city was unusually quiet, wrapped in the fragile stillness that exists just before morning rush. She padded barefoot to the kitchen, brewed coffee, and carried the mug to the wide window overlooking Manhattan. Equilibrium Partners had grown into something she never imagined. Offices in 3 cities. A scholarship fund for young women studying finance. A foundation helping survivors of financial abuse rebuild their lives. But on that morning, none of those milestones occupied her thoughts. Instead, she was thinking about balance. Not the financial kind, she'd mastered that long ago. The emotional kind. Her phone buzzed gently on the counter. A message from a client. I signed the papers today. I'm free. Thank you for teaching me I didn't have to be afraid of my own money. Evelyn smiled. Freedom. That was the real currency she traded in. She stepped onto the balcony. The sun crested slowly over the skyline, painting the glass towers in gold. Somewhere below, a delivery truck rumbled to life. A jogger passed. The city was waking up. And so was a new version of her, every single day. Later that afternoon, Evelyn opened an old storage box she hadn't touched in years. Inside were remnants of her former life, court documents, printed bank statements, photographs from a marriage that now felt like it belonged to another person. She sifted through them carefully, not with pain, but with clarity. Every page represented a lesson. Every scar, a recalculation. At the bottom of the box lay a blank notebook she'd once bought during the divorce, back when the future felt terrifying and uncertain. She opened it. The pages were still empty. Evelyn picked up a pen and wrote a single sentence. This is where my real story began. Then she closed the notebook and slid the box shut. Not as an act of denial, but as a conscious decision to archive the past. To acknowledge it without living inside it. The ledger of her old life was balanced. And closed that evening, Evelyn hosted a small dinner. Friends filled the loft with warmth and laughter. Among them were women she'd mentored, colleagues she trusted, and clients who had become confidants. When the conversation lulled, someone raised a glass. To Evelyn, Camille said, smiling. For proving that intelligence is power, and kindness is stronger than revenge. Glasses clinked. Evelyn felt emotion rise in her chest, steady and grounding. She looked around the table, at faces shaped by resilience, reinvention, and courage. This was her chosen family. Built not by accident, but by intention. She lifted her glass. To new chapters, she said softly. And to writing them ourselves. After everyone left, Evelyn cleaned the kitchen in companionable silence. The city glittered beyond her windows, infinite and alive. She returned to the balcony one last time. There had been a moment, years ago, when she believed her life had collapsed into ruin. When betrayal had seemed like an ending. But endings, she now understood, were often disguises. What looked like subtraction had been addition. What felt like loss had created space. And in that space, she had built something extraordinary, not just a business, but a life anchored in autonomy, trust, and purpose. For the first time in years, Evelyn allowed herself a long, steady breath. No fear. No anger. No unfinished calculations. Just quiet certainty. The numbers added up. Not because she had won a legal battle or secured financial independence, but because she had reclaimed authorship of her own story. And that was a wealth no one could ever siphon away. Evelyn watched the lights shimmer across the river and smiled, not at the city, but at the woman she had become. Her life stretched ahead of her, open and expansive. And she stepped into it without hesitation.